stop the war. Calls for ceasefire. Come back to the negotiating table.
Народной Республики Донбасс.
Before I began, I wanted to say
how to stop the war.
All these pleas have fallen on deaf ears. Has the United States of America lost its supremacy in the world? The US, once a dominant global superpower, is no longer able to exert the same influence over the world affairs. This decline in power has been ongoing for decades as the US has grown at a slower rate compared to other countries, notably China. Despite maintaining one of the world's most powerful military and a vast economy, America's relative decline has become increasingly evident, with other nations growing stronger economically and politically. The US is no longer viewed as the indispensable or exceptional nation it once claimed to be. Hello and welcome, I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching Statecraft. The failure to contain the escalation in West Asia is a clear example of how the US is losing its significance, prominence, and supremacy. That the West Asian countries, that Israel, a clear ally, that the Arab world, strategic partners, that all these countries together have not come together to find consensus in what the US is saying and follow what America is asking them to do. Now, this is not a story of just today. It started a while ago. One of the clearest signs of the US's decline is that countries are no longer looking to the US for leadership or guidance. The US withdrawal from Afghanistan marked a significant strategic setback, not only for its immediate impacts, but for the broader ripple effects it triggered across West Asia and beyond. The chaotic exit emboldened adversaries like the Taliban, who seized billions of dollars in US military hardware and reignited terrorist threats from groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS-K in Afghanistan. This failure, compounded by the inability to maintain key alliances with NATO partners, created a void in regional stability. Simultaneously, US policy in West Asia has empowered Iran, or rather, Iran continued to choose its path of nuclear ambitions, and the destabilizing factors in the region continue, whether it is because of the Hamas and Hezbollah in the region, or for that matter, because of Israel's policies, despite pressures from Washington, D.C. to come out and contain the existing conflict. As a result, America's geopolitical position has eroded, leading to strained relations with longtime allies such as Saudi Arabia and Israel, and weakening the overall strategic deterrence in the region. In major global conflicts such as the Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Gaza war, the US has failed to mediate or even stop the fighting. Despite its historical role in brokering peace deals or influencing global decisions, the US has been largely ineffective in stopping these wars. Its inability to prevent Russia's invasion of Ukraine or the continued violence between Israel and Hamas has highlighted the limitations of American diplomacy and influence in the modern world.
Ради сдерживания России, Китая и других стран, чья независимая политика воспринимается как вызов гегемонии, Запад своими агрессивными действиями ломает изначально сложившуюся по его же лекалам систему глобализации. Урегулировать множащиеся конфликты невозможно, если не разобраться в их первопричинах и не восстановить веру в нашу способность объединять усилия ради общего блага и справедливости для всех. Будем откровенны, далеко не все представленные в этом зале государства признают ключевой принцип Устава ООН – суверенное равенство всех государств. Соединенные Штаты давно объявили устами своих президентов о собственной исключительности Это касается отношений Вашингтона к своим союзникам, от которых требуют беспрекословного послушания даже в ущерб их национальным интересам. Правь Америка. В этом суть пресловутого порядка, основанного на правилах, прямой угрозы многосторонности и международному миру.
The US administration also faces accusations of hypocrisy, as its firm support for Israel's military actions in Gaza, where also many civilians have been killed, contradicts its condemnation of Russia's war in Ukraine for indiscriminately killing civilians. The discrimination between civilians in Gaza and civilians in Ukraine is stark and telling. While the US has attempted to link her support for both Israel and Ukraine under the banner of defending democracies against annihilation, critics in the global south, including key nations like Brazil and Indonesia, see the West's inconsistent approach to civilian casualties as double standards. This growing perception is likely to deepen the divide between West and countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Further compounding the US's diminishing role is the fact that many of its NATO allies and traditional partners no longer fully trust American leadership. In fact, there is a fissure within the NATO itself, many questioning the importance and significance, many others questioning US's role itself and the fact that Donald Trump as president and Donald Trump today as presidential candidate could change things in many ways. The role of America in the NATO could find itself diminishing because of the policy decisions of Washington, D.C. come November 5th. The US's unpredictable foreign policy, especially during Donald Trump's presidency, has eroded trust among its closest allies. Actions such as pulling out of treaties, starting trade wars, and criticizing longtime allies have led countries like France, Germany, and even Canada to distance themselves from the US. Many of these countries are now pursuing more independent policies, no longer relying on the US as a central player in global affairs.
Kwestia bezpieczeństwa kontynentu to nie może być kwestia rozdzielnych, a czasami skonfliktowanych, konkurencyjnych inicjatyw. Mamy tych inicjatyw, ja sam nie umiem już zliczyć, ile jest porozumień, formatów, których celem ma być bezpieczeństwo Europy. Tylko one właściwie stoją w miejscu. Europa może przyjąć część odpowiedzialności za nasze bezpieczeństwo, ale ja nie mam żadnych oczekiwań. My sobie damy radę, my wydajemy 4% na naszą obronę. Ja nie chcę, żeby Niemcy kupowały nam czołgi, w ogóle nie ma tego tematu. My sami realizujemy nasze zakupy i będziemy w tym bardziej efektywni niż jakikolwiek inny kraj w Europie. My nikogo o nic nie prosimy w tej kwestii.
European leaders are also growing increasingly anxious about the future of their security partnership with the United States, especially as political uncertainty looms in Washington. At the Munich Security Conference, discussion centered around the possibility of Europe needing to bolster its own defense capabilities, given the US Congress's recent blockade of additional military aid to Ukraine and Donald Trump's threats to withhold NATO protection from allies not meeting defense spending targets. Although Vice President Kamala Harris has offered assurances that the US will maintain its commitments, European officials remain skeptical, with many recognizing the need to act quickly and strengthen their own defense strategies in anticipation of possible American disengagement, especially with an unpredictable Trump presidency potentially on the horizon. This shift in global power dynamics has also been marked by the rise of China and Russia, two nations that now challenge the US on multiple fronts. China's state-controlled system has steadily strengthened, making it an appealing model for countries in the developing world, especially in contrast to the apparent dysfunction of Western liberal democracies such as the US. With President Xi Jinping's consolidation of power and Beijing's strategic use of state capitalism, China not only maintains domestic stability by controlling job creation, but also exerts growing influence on the global stage through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative. While there may be many critics of China and China's policies, economic and financial in various parts of the world, including the whole controversy over Chinese debt trap, the fact of the matter is that many countries do not like being questioned, or do not like questions on their democracy, on their government, or their form of governance, and therefore choose Beijing over any Western nation that questions them on their rights, their records, their human rights records particularly so. Now, while long-term challenges like a potential credit bubble loom, China's capacity to leverage technology for social control and its increasing appeal to other nations suggests that its political and economic model is far more durable than many in the West had previously assumed. Adding to the US's diminishing influence, countries in the global south, such as India, are increasingly reluctant to openly align with Washington. While India values its strategic partnerships with the US, particularly in countering China's rise, it has steadfastly maintained its foreign policy independence. India's stance during the Russia-Ukraine war, refusing to condemn Russia or join Western sanctions, demonstrates its commitment to a balanced and non-aligned foreign policy. India, along with other global South nations, prioritizes its own strategic and economic interests, reflecting a broader trend of countries distancing themselves from the United States of America or US-centric alliances to pursue more autonomous and multipolar approaches in global diplomacy. This reluctance underscores the fading dominance of the US and the global questioning of the free and open liberal democratic model promoted by the United States of America. While the US once shaped the global order, today other countries are asserting their influence in regions such as West Asia, Europe, and the Indo-Pacific. Military successes of countries like Turkey and Iran and Syria further demonstrate that US no longer holds the sole power to resolve conflicts or influence outcomes in international affairs. The world has transitioned into a multipolar order, where the US is just one of several powerful nations and no longer the uncontested leader it once was. Thank you for watching Statecraft. Goodbye and take care.